Breaking news is shaking the heart of Hollywood tonight as a judge has handed down a stunning decision in the high-profile legal battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, in a move that no one saw coming. The court has officially granted Lively's motion to remove her deposition from the case record, and the shockwaves from this ruling are already rippling through the entertainment industry, legal experts, and the court of public opinion. This is not just another procedural update. This is a dramatic shift that could completely change the trajectory of a case that has already captured the attention of millions for weeks. Speculation has been mounting about whether the court would side with the star known for her commanding on-screen presence and carefully protected public image, or with her legal opponent whose team argued that the deposition contained crucial information to uncovering the full truth. The tension built to a fever pitch as both sides fought over every detail of the contested testimony, and the stakes could not have been higher. For Lively, the removal of her deposition means that some of the most contentious exchanges in the case will never see the light of day in an official legal setting. This shields her from potential narrative damage and prevents certain statements from being pulled into the relentless cycle of media headlines and social media debates for Baldoni. However, this is a sharp and public setback, one that comes with the added weight of the judge's own words, which called out his legal team for crossing the boundaries of relevance and fairness during questioning. The ruling makes clear that in this courtroom, celebrity status does not mean immunity, but it also does not mean open season for invasive or irrelevant lines of inquiry. And that balance has now tipped in Lively's favor. The reaction has been immediate and intense across Hollywood, where agents, producers, and publicists are already recalculating the implications for both stars as the next phases of this legal fight approach. The story is unfolding in real time, and every new detail is feeding a growing storm of coverage, from morning talk shows to late-night commentary to endless threads on social platforms. This is the kind of high-stakes legal drama that grips not only those inside the industry, but audiences far beyond, and with the judge's decision now in place, the battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni is entering a new Chapter 1, where every move from here will be scrutinized even more closely. And one question is already dominating the conversation. What will Baldoni do next after this highly public and highly consequential loss? Breaking news sweeps across Hollywood. As a highly anticipated court decision has just been delivered, the judge has granted Blake Lively's motion to remove her deposition from the ongoing case that has had the entertainment industry buzzing for months. The ruling has already sent waves through both legal circles and celebrity media, as it not only reshapes the immediate path of the case, but also offers a rare look into the behind-the-scenes maneuvers of powerful legal teams and the strategic battles they wage. The decision came after weeks of speculation over whether the judge would side with Lively or uphold the request from the opposing party, led by Justin Baldoni and his team, to keep the deposition in the case files. The moment the ruling was read in court, reporters scrambled to relay the news to the outside world, and within minutes it had gone viral on every social platform, from Twitter to Instagram to news outlets broadcasting live updates across the globe. For many, this was more than just a procedural decision. It was a sign of how this case might unfold and which side might have the upper hand going forward. The case itself has been steeped in drama, not only because of the star power involved, but because of the nature of the claims and the way both sides have fought tooth and nail over every piece of evidence, every witness, and every procedural move. When Blake Lively's attorneys first filed the motion to remove her deposition, they argued that the questioning process had been unfair, overly invasive, and unrelated to the core issues of the dispute. They emphasized that certain topics broached in the deposition were irrelevant to the claims and could cause unnecessary damage to her reputation if allowed to remain in the official record. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's legal team countered aggressively, insisting that the deposition contained crucial context and details that could shed light on the truth of the matter. They framed their argument around the principle that every relevant piece of information should remain available for the judge and potentially a jury to review. The legal back and forth became a media spectacle, with court filings dissected by legal analysts and entertainment reporters alike. Public opinion was divided, with some believing Lively's motion was a calculated effort to protect her image, while others saw it as a justified move to safeguard against unfair questioning. As the day of the hearing arrived, tensions in the courtroom were palpable. Journalists lined the back wall, Sketch artists prepared their pencils, and both legal teams sat with folders stacked high. The judge entered with a calm but authoritative demeanor, making it clear that despite the celebrity status of those involved, this was still a court of law governed by the same rules and standards that apply to everyone. After hearing closing arguments from both sides, the judge paused for a moment of silence before delivering the decision in a clear, measured tone. The court grants the motion to remove the deposition from the official record. The words seemed to hang in the air for a moment before the room erupted into a mix of murmurs and quiet gasps. This decision was not just a victory for Lively, it was also a moment that called out Baldoni's legal team for their approach in pursuing certain lines of questioning. The judge noted in the ruling that parts of the deposition strayed too far from the matters at hand, and that the manner of questioning risked crossing the boundary from legitimate inquiry into undue harassment. The aftermath of the judge's ruling rippled beyond the walls of the courthouse as legal experts began to weigh in on what this decision truly meant for the trajectory of the case. Many noted that motions to remove depositions are not often granted, especially in high-profile disputes where every word on record can become a battleground for interpretation. Yet in this instance, the judge made it clear that certain boundaries had been crossed during questioning, and that protecting the integrity of the process was paramount. Observers pointed out that this was not merely a procedural win for Blake Lively, but also a public relations boost her team had been seeking for weeks. They had positioned the motion as an effort to keep the focus of the case on the actual legal issues, rather than on salacious or irrelevant matters that could capture headlines and distract from the truth. In doing so, they tapped into a broader conversation about how celebrity cases are often tried not just in courtrooms but in the court of public opinion, where perception can sometimes matter as much as fact. The removal of the deposition means that certain exchanges which may have painted Lively in a controversial or unflattering light will no longer be part of the official record. This is a significant shield against potential narrative damage, especially considering how quickly snippets of testimony can be taken out of context and magnified across social media platforms where nuance is often lost. At the same time, the ruling was a clear message from the bench to the Baldoni legal team that their approach to extracting information in this instance had not met the standards expected in a court of law. The judge referenced instances where questions veered into personal territory with no demonstrable relevance to the dispute. This assessment, while not a formal reprimand, carried weight in signaling to the public and to the legal community that tactics in high-stakes cases must still operate within professional boundaries. The impact on Baldoni's side was immediate. Insiders revealed that his team spent hours in private meetings after the ruling, recalibrating their next steps. Sources close to the matter suggested that they were frustrated by the setback but determined to pivot quickly rather than dwell on the loss. They began strategizing ways to secure other forms of evidence that could bolster their arguments and keep the pressure on Lively's camp. Meanwhile, media coverage of the ruling split into two dominant narratives, one framing Lively as a strategic and disciplined figure who successfully defended her rights within the bounds of the legal process, the other portraying Baldoni as facing a critical blow that could undercut his momentum in the dispute. This division in coverage mirrored the divide in public opinion online, where hashtags supporting each side began trending almost immediately. Fans loyal to Lively hailed the ruling as proof that she was being unfairly targeted and that justice had been served, while supporters of Baldoni lamented what they saw as an obstruction to uncovering the full truth for Hollywood insiders. The decision became the latest example of how celebrity litigation often evolves into a layered conflict, blending legal maneuvering with image management. Every filing, every statement, and every ruling carries weight, not just in court but in the entertainment industry where reputations can shift overnight. As the news cycle churned, both sides prepared for the next phase in the battle, aware that this ruling, while important, was only one chapter in a much larger and still unfolding story. In the written ruling released shortly after the hearing, the judge laid out a detailed account of why the motion to remove the deposition had been granted, and the language made clear that the court was focused on maintaining fairness and relevance in the proceedings. According to the document, the deposition in question contained multiple segments where the line of questioning strayed from material facts and ventured into speculative or overly personal areas. The judge stated that while latitude is often given in depositions to explore a wide range of topics, there must still be a clear and reasonable connection to the issues in dispute. The ruling underscored that this connection was not sufficiently demonstrated in several of the contested questions. The judge also highlighted that certain questions seemed intended more to provoke discomfort or generate a reaction than to elicit substantive information relevant to the case at hand. This was a pointed observation, and though it did not amount to a formal sanction, it was nonetheless a public acknowledgement that the Baldoni legal team had taken a tactical approach that the court viewed as overstepping. This kind of language in a ruling can have long-lasting effects not only on how the current case unfolds, but also on how the attorneys involved are perceived in future matters. Legal commentators quickly seized on the fact that the judge's reasoning balanced procedural integrity with the protection of parties from unnecessary exposure to irrelevant and potentially damaging lines of inquiry in high-profile disputes. The ability to keep proceedings tightly focused on legitimate issues can be a critical advantage, especially for a public figure like Blake Lively, whose every statement is subject to intense media scrutiny. The decision also delved into the importance of judicial oversight during depositions, noting that while courts do not typically micromanage these sessions, they retain the authority to step in after the fact when boundaries are crossed. In this instance, the judge found that intervention was warranted both to preserve fairness and to send a clear message that even in cases involving public figures, the rules remain the same for everyone. In response to the ruling, Baldoni's legal team issued a carefully worded statement expressing disappointment, but reaffirming their commitment to pursuing the truth through all available legal avenues. They emphasized that while this was a setback, they had other evidence and testimony that would support their case. Still, the optics of having a deposition removed, especially under these circumstances, presented challenges. The media coverage in the hours following the decision often paired the judge's written critiques with commentary from experts who noted that such a ruling can subtly shift momentum in a case even if it does not directly decide the ultimate outcome. The perception that one side has been admonished or corrected by the court can influence not only public opinion, but also the confidence and strategy of the parties involved. Meanwhile, Lively's camp maintained a reserved posture, avoiding any appearance of gloating, and instead framing the ruling as a straightforward application of the law to ensure that proceedings remain fair and relevant behind the scenes. However, sources indicated that her team viewed the decision as a significant win, both legally and in terms of public image in the fast-moving arena of celebrity litigation where narratives are built as much by perception as by fact. A ruling like this becomes part of the broader storyline and can set the tone for the battles to come. As the news of the judge's ruling spread across the entertainment industry, reactions from Hollywood insiders were swift and intense within hours. Publicists, producers, and fellow actors were privately discussing what this meant for Blake Lively's reputation and for Justin Baldoni's ongoing legal strategy. Some saw it as a pivotal turning point that could embolden Lively's camp, giving them both the legal momentum and the public narrative advantage they needed in a case that had already been fiercely contested. Others felt the ruling would only fuel Baldoni's determination to push harder in other areas of the dispute, determined to prove that the removal of the deposition would not weaken his position. The Hollywood press quickly split into factions, with certain outlets emphasizing the judge's critique of Baldoni's legal team and framing it as a setback, while others downplayed the significance of the decision and suggested it was merely a procedural matter that would have little impact on the ultimate outcome. Morning talk shows, entertainment segments, and podcast hosts began dissecting the ruling line by line, noting that in high-profile cases, such moments often shape public perception more than they shift legal realities. On social media, the conversation was even more charged. Hashtags supporting both sides trended simultaneously as fans engaged in spirited debates, some arguing that Lively was simply protecting her rights and ensuring fairness, while others accused her of trying to hide information that could be damaging to her image. Celebrity commentators joined the fray, offering their own interpretations and sometimes revealing insider tidbits about how depositions are handled in cases involving high-profile figures. Legal analysts brought in by major networks pointed out that the ruling also served as a reminder that celebrity status does not negate the protections afforded to any party in litigation. They explained that while public figures often face more invasive questioning, the court still has a duty to ensure that such questioning remains tethered to the facts in dispute. This balance between transparency and protection is especially delicate in Hollywood, where even minor details from a deposition can be spun into headlines and viral posts behind the scenes. There was also talk among talent agencies and studio executives about the potential ripple effects of the ruling on future collaborations. Both Lively and Baldoni are established names in the industry, and ongoing legal battles of this magnitude can create hesitations or strategic recalculations when it comes to casting decisions and project investments. Some insiders speculated that if the dispute continued to escalate, both sides could face increasing scrutiny from partners and brands wary of being associated with prolonged controversy. Yet for now, Lively appeared to hold the upper hand. Her team's disciplined approach to public messaging ensured that the ruling was framed as a win for fairness and due process rather than as a personal victory over Baldoni. This restraint was noted by industry observers as a smart strategy designed to keep the focus on the legal merits rather than on personal rivalries. Still, there was an undercurrent of anticipation about how Baldoni would respond and whether his legal team would adjust their tactics to avoid further judicial criticism, with the next procedural deadlines looming. Both camps began preparing for the next set of filings, knowing that each move from here on would be closely watched, dissected, and judged not only by the court, but also by a captivated public, eager to see how this high-stakes drama would unfold in the days following the judge's decision. The legal and media landscape surrounding this case continued to shift with remarkable speed. Both Blake Lively's and Justin Baldoni's camps were now operating under intense scrutiny, not just from the court, but from a public that had become deeply invested in every twist and turn of the dispute. Lively's attorneys were quick to file follow-up motions aimed at reinforcing the protective framework the court had established by granting the removal of the deposition. They understood that this victory was both a shield and a signal, and that keeping the narrative aligned with principles of fairness and relevance would serve their client well moving forward. Baldoni's legal team, meanwhile, began to focus on alternative strategies, combing through their files for evidence that could carry the same weight they had hoped the deposition would provide. There were whispers among legal insiders that the team might pursue additional witness testimony or expand certain discovery requests in an effort to fill the gap left by the judge's ruling. These moves would have to be calculated carefully, as any hint of overreach could risk another judicial rebuke and further erode their standing in the eyes of the court. And the public media coverage remained relentless, with major outlets producing deep dives into the history of similar rulings and the potential implications for both sides. Entertainment journalists sought out past cases where deposition removals had shifted momentum, offering parallels and cautionary tales about how even procedural decisions could change the tone of a high-profile battle. The narrative among fans and followers continued to evolve as well, with some seeing the decision as a vindication for Lively and a setback for Baldoni, while others remained convinced that the truth of the matter would emerge regardless of procedural setbacks. Social platforms remained flooded with commentary, speculation, and analysis. From self-styled legal experts and celebrity watchers alike, industry observers noted that both parties seemed aware of the delicate balance they needed to maintain. Lively's side was avoiding overt celebration, focusing instead on the broader message of fairness and process, while Baldoni's camp worked to project resilience and determination, refusing to allow the ruling to define the trajectory of their case behind closed doors. There were discussions about the long-term ramifications. For both figures in Hollywood, Lively's ongoing projects and endorsements could benefit from the perception of having successfully defended against an overreach in questioning, while Baldoni's reputation as a producer and actor could be tested by how he navigated the setback. Both sides understood that beyond the immediate legal stakes, there were careers, reputations, and future opportunities on the line. Legal analysts were divided on the potential next steps. Some predicted that Baldoni's team would double down on other areas of discovery, while others believed they might shift focus toward settlement discussions in order to avoid further negative rulings that could weaken their position. Either way, the judge's decision had become a defining moment, one that would be referenced in every future development. As the case continued to unfold in the weeks ahead, attention would turn to upcoming hearings, where new evidence and arguments could either solidify the advantage gained by Lively or provide Baldoni with a path to regain momentum. For now, however, the prevailing narrative was that Lively had scored a significant win, not only in the legal sense, but also in the battle for public perception. She had weathered an aggressive line of questioning had it removed from the record and managed to keep the focus on the principles of fairness and relevance that any litigant, celebrity or otherwise, is entitled to in court. This approach had earned her praise from some quarters of the media and quiet respect from certain legal circles who saw the ruling as an important reinforcement of procedural boundaries. The next chapter of this case would inevitably bring new revelations, challenges, and shifts in strategy. But the memory of this decision and the judge's pointed remarks about the conduct of Baldoni's legal team would linger, shaping both the tone and the tactics of what was still to come conclusion. As this chapter closes, it is clear that the judge's decision to remove Blake Lively's deposition from the case record was far more than a routine procedural matter. It was a pivotal moment that reshaped the dynamics between the two sides, altered the media narrative, and underscored the court's role in protecting the fairness of proceedings. Even in high-profile disputes, the ruling served as both a shield for Lively and a warning to Baldoni's team. A reminder that while aggressive legal strategies can sometimes yield breakthroughs, they can also backfire if they cross into territory the court deems irrelevant or unnecessarily invasive for Lively. The victory reinforced her position not only in the courtroom but in the broader public eye, allowing her to maintain an image of measured resolve and principled defense for Baldoni. It marked a moment to reassess, recalibrate, and prepare for the battles ahead, knowing that each step will be weighed not just by the judge, but by an audience far beyond the courthouse in the world of celebrity litigation, where perception often runs parallel to legal reality. This decision will stand as a case study in how courtroom strategy, media management, and public opinion intersect, creating a multifaceted drama that captures the attention of fans, legal experts, and Hollywood insiders alike. As the dust settles on this latest chapter of the legal showdown between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, one thing has become abundantly clear: this ruling is more than a procedural win. It is a statement about the boundaries of fairness in high-profile litigation. The judge's decision to grant Lively's motion to remove her deposition from the case record was not made lightly, and the language in the ruling leaves no doubt that certain lines of questioning had strayed too far from the matters at hand. This is a moment that will be remembered not only for its immediate impact on the case, but for the way it underscores the role of the court in protecting the integrity of the process. For Lively, the outcome provides both relief and an opportunity to refocus her legal strategy without the looming threat of having potentially damaging but irrelevant testimony overshadow the core issues. Her legal team now has the space to double down on the substantive arguments and evidence they believe will ultimately secure a favorable resolution for Baldoni. The ruling represents a setback, but it is not the end of the road. His team remains committed to pressing forward in other areas, determined to recover the ground they have lost and prove their case through other evidence and witnesses. Still, there is no denying that this decision has shifted the momentum. At least for now, the public and media have taken note, and perception in a case like this can often be as influential as the facts themselves. The ruling also sends a signal to other high-profile litigants and their attorneys, reminding them that even in the most contentious battles, there are rules and standards that must be upheld. Both sides know that the road ahead remains unpredictable. There will be more motions, more hearings, and perhaps even more rulings that could reshape the landscape once again. But for today, the spotlight rests firmly on this victory for Lively, a moment that her team will no doubt seek to build upon as they move forward in the months to come. The entertainment industry, meanwhile, will continue to watch closely, knowing that the outcome of this dispute could influence not only the careers of those directly involved, but also the way similar cases are approached in the future. Whether this decision proves to be a decisive turning point or merely one step in a longer journey remains to be seen. But for now, the message from the court is clear. Relevance, fairness, and integrity must guide the proceedings, no matter how famous the people at the center of the storm may be.